Hi, Anne, and welcome. It's been a delight to work with you and work for you even and know you for several years now. And I'd love to know, of course, you're really well known for education, the organ world, women organists, and so forth. But how did it all begin for you? How did you get into the world of music to start with, Anne?
Well, I was fortunate to have grown up in a church-going family, so there was the organ in the corner of the church, Sunday after Sunday. And I was also fortunate in having parents who paid for my piano lessons. And I was a very keen musician, rather unclear about my destiny as a musician. At first I thought, oh, I'll be a concert pianist. I was about 10 then. But in those days, the key word was dedicated. So the question was I dedicated enough? And I realized, no, I didn't think I was dedicated enough to be a concert pianist. So then, oh, what else is there? Music teacher or piano teacher? That sounds very stuffy, I thought at that age. So there we are. I went through my schooling thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And in those days, of course, we're talking quite a long time ago, girls' careers advice tended to focus on nursing or teaching or hairdressing, so that was no help. Anyway, I heard the organ. The organist looked nice at the church, and so I asked him for lessons. And he wasn't a very good teacher, actually, but nevertheless, it is quite addictive playing the organ. Looking back, not a particularly good organ, not a particularly good teacher, but nevertheless, I was hooked. I then changed teacher and I got that crucial thing, encouragement. Yeah. And so I took a diploma or two, a piano diploma also, still unclear what I was going to do with my life, left school, took some jobs, took some more music diplomas, and then I suddenly came to and I thought, this is daft. I want to spend my life doing music. Even if I do nothing but teach beginners the piano forever, that's better than doing something that's not music. And I think everyone needs that moment of thinking, yes, only music will do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, yes, when students ask me, don't know whether to do music as a career, I generally say don't then, because if you feel there's a choice, then there are probably easier ways to earn a living. But if you feel there's no choice, then go with it.
You kind of said very casually there, I did a diploma or two. So did you find that you were naturally gifted or naturally able, or did you just apply yourself well, and was it diligence and hard work and graft almost?
Well, when I started teaching, to answer your question in a roundabout way, I realized that absolutely everyone without exception, has terrific potential. But most of us, I include myself, limit that potential by, lack of confidence chiefly, but also lack of opportunity, lack of good tuition, sometimes lack of hard work, because personality traits include the ability to knuckle down and go after your goal rather than just sit back, as you were saying in our earlier chat, and moan about some things not going your way.
Yeah.
So what was the question? Oh yes, gifted. So I reject the word gift, talent, when it applies to music. I just think everyone has the potential. So what set me on that course? I just loved making music. And as I say, I had some of the key ingredients. I had increasingly good teaching and encouragement. Increasingly, I had encouragement. Parents who paid and supported and listened to me play and so on. And just to touch on the gender thing, the organist I first learnt with in my local church was replaced by a woman, and she was replaced by another woman. And it never occurred to me that there would be any problem when I did eventually decide to be a career organist. It never occurred to me that
that's nice to hear that you had that healthy background. That's nice.
Yeah, that's right. Role models.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. So I was chatting 2 or 3 weeks ago to a mutual friend of ours on the phone, Freddie Stocken, and Freddie was saying when I was chatting about this interview coming up, he was saying don't forget, he said, Anne is a stunning musician. People forget what she was like as a performer. He said, I've accompanied when she's directed chorally, and I've really been impressed with her musicianship. So tell me about your performing career, which often people don't know as much about, but must have been significant to you in your earlier realization that music was your journey days.
Yes, well, when I eventually decided I was going to be a musician, I had left school 4 years previously and continued to study music. So when I went to the academy, I was both older but also more advanced than most of the other people in my year. So I started getting performance opportunities then, and found I liked it. And of course, we all like the opportunity to share the work we've done and the enthusiasm we have for the repertoire with other people. So it was a natural follow-on. I did perform frequently until, well, the early 2000s actually.
Right.
And then I decided, well, there are various things you don't get told when you're young actually. You don't get told that while you're young there are opportunities, but you grow older and then there's the new generation coming up and they have the opportunities and rather more time for practice than you have when you're older.
Yes.
And so you have to keep putting yourself out there. And I thought, well, let's leave the field clearer now for younger people, and I've got other things to get on with. So I did make a deliberate decision to stop doing recitals. But I'm really glad I did do quite a lot of playing in those earlier.
So how did I know you performed in places like Japan and America. How do these opportunities come your way?
Oh, always, I think one sets them up.
Right.
That's right. As I grew up, I thought, oh well, you get to be good, and then people write to you and say, please come.
They knock on your door.
That's right, and to some extent, of course, and they're truly brilliant. I'm sure that is true. But for most people, of course, you've got to keep putting yourself out there, asking for work, suggesting opportunities, maybe getting an agent. It doesn't happen magically.
No. Okay. So now moving on to perhaps what you are more renowned for, certainly in the UK, is St Giles, although it has spread internationally and does have an international reputation. So the church that you've been associated with and the organ school that's developed around it. So when did that begin? How did it? Has it just evolved? Was it a vision you had from day one? Is it something that's just grown?
The history is, excuse me, let me think back. At a certain point in my life, I looked around and I thought there are all these organists associations, as there still are, of course, the Royal College of Organists, the Incorporated Association of Organists, the Royal School of Church Music, the Guild of Church Musicians, local organist associations, so many. Where are all the organists to provide membership and support for these associations? I was a trustee of the RCO, and I was chatting with Sir David Lumsden, and he was also principal of the academy at that point, and he said to me, where are the applicants for the organ department at the academy? There seems to be a diminishing supply of organists. And I thought, this is ridiculous, with all these different organisations, why don't we just have a national effort to recruit organists and put organists in touch with each other? So that resulted in National Learn the Organ Year 1990, and we set a target of recruiting 500 new organists, and we effectively we recruited 2,000. That's to say, we sent out 2,000 starter packs. But what also transpired was that not only were there loads of people wanting to learn the organ, there were lots of teachers wanting to teach them, but there hadn't been any connection between these two areas. And the follow-up to that was National Organ Teachers Encouragement Scheme. Meanwhile, I thought, well, there are still all these people in and around London wanting to learn the organ, and I've got their names and addresses because I was secretary of National Learn the Organ Year. So I set up classes, and I expected 6 applicants for the first set of classes for beginners, and I got 30, and that was the beginning of St Giles International Organ School, and so I went on from there.
Now, you obviously you can't just do that and have decades of success without being able to understand teaching or the art of teaching, and that's something else you have a tremendous reputation for um, for certainly for a consistent approach for technique, for breaking tasks down, for understanding the challenges that people have and working at ways to overcome the obstacles that are in their way. Is that something, again, is that something that because maybe it's your mindset, the way you see things, how logical you view things, or is it something that's evolved over time as well?
Well, both, I think. When my very first music diploma was a teaching LRAM, which was an external diploma in those days, and I did that as a piano teacher, and I found it absolutely fascinating, the breakdown of the tasks.
Mm.
And so I did a lot of piano teaching in those years, like many organ teachers, started with piano teaching. And then I acquired organ students, and I just learned so much from watching the students, watching them play and working out how the technique works, because I hadn't, oh, that was another factor actually. I was taught, like many students of that era, I was taught, I think I can probably honestly say, absolutely nothing about technique. And it was only after I got my FRCO and left the academy that I mentioned, in fact, to Gillian Weir, with whom I was then taking lessons, wonderful lessons. I said, look, you know, I really think my pedal technique's rubbish. She said, oh, go off and get the Germani tutor and work through that. So I did, and learned a lot from that. And then I was keen in attending master classes, notably Jacques van Ottensen. And so that was another series of revelations. So I learned from the great teachers, and I learned from watching my students. And I suppose I was keen to learn because I found the whole thing rather fascinating. And yes, I do love breaking things down and just ascertaining how things work.
Yes.
But most of all, the most vivid lessons I've had in how to teach technique is by watching people, seeing what works, and of course trying it for myself.
Yes, yeah. I have a son who has a bike who always likes taking it apart to understand how it works. I'm always telling him he shouldn't be doing that. But it is part of our craft, though, isn't it?
Yes.
It is that's exactly what we're doing, breaking it down into those small components, understanding how they fit together, and understanding when it doesn't work, why it doesn't work, and how to overcome that challenge.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, I think you've almost answered what I was going to say next, but I was going to then ask you about the all-encompassing, the embracing approach you have to everybody. When I first came to teach on the summer school, when you invited me, I was just delighted to be there. But what I felt instantly from the word go was the breadth of people on the same course and in the same concerts. People who hadn't been playing very long, or had been playing very long but were still at an early stage on their journey. People who perhaps were further on in their journey, or perhaps found the technical aspects easier and were able to play technically more advanced material. And it didn't matter how young, how old, what nationality, what level of ability. Everybody integrated, and the summer schools are just a fantastic sense of community. How's that come about?
Well, that's so nice to hear you say that, because that's right, that is important. But clearly you think it's important too, and I think most teachers do, but perhaps it wasn't the traditional way. I suppose I can only say, who would not value these people? I think the kind of people that I've met in my teaching, and indeed the students who come on the summer course, I think they're heroic. Most of them church organists. They play in difficult circumstances, perhaps unheated churches, or perhaps unsympathetic clergy, or no clergy, no regular clergy, often not very good instruments, often for no money, not necessarily with appreciative congregations. And on they go, and they put up with the privations, the difficulties, the challenges, perhaps the lack of a local teacher. Without knowing anyone else, they can share their triumphs and challenges with locally, and they stay cheerful and enthusiastic. I think they're great, and I think anybody encountering such people would think they're great. But that's right, I think also comes from my belief that we all have this great untapped potential, and that our role as teachers is to help people unleash that potential, but also endorse the good things that they're doing so that they can go on feeling a bit stronger.
Yeah, I think one of your strengths has been the sense of community, and the sense of all-encompassing.
Well, that's nice to hear. I mean, I know it's true of your teaching too, Robin.
Thank you. So tell me about publishing, Anne. Now, you've got something like 22 publications to your name now, if I've got it right. And how did you first get into that? Because that in itself, is it that you approached a publisher, or a publisher approached you?
The origins of that, I can't quite remember, it was a long time ago, the exact circumstances. I think it was Gordon Stewart, who with me convened a meeting of key people in the organ world. I remember we met in a room at the Royal Academy of Music decades ago, and we were talking about all the challenges of the organ world in this country. And I think it was Gordon himself who said, somebody just needs to go through the Royal College of Organists library, locate all the elementary pieces and put them into a volume so that we get more music out there for people to play, which is suitable for students and amateurs. And I thought, I fancy doing that. So I can't claim it was my idea, but I had months, I can't remember how long, years maybe, regular visits to the Royal College of Organists library. Robin Langley was the librarian, and he was great. And I went through every single volume in the Royal College of Organists library, which you may know is absolutely huge. I think it's the largest organ music library in the world. Picked out what I hoped would be good pieces and arranged them in graded volumes. And then I thought, this is all very well, but we need some tuition to go with them for all these people that can't find a teacher. So that whole 5-volume set turned into the graded anthology for organ, and I proposed it to Kramer Music, and they said yes, we'll publish it. So that was the initial set, and then I went on from there with Kramer, several books with Kramer, and then Oxford University Press approached me for a rather similar thing actually. They said, could I go through the OUP archive and pick out the pieces which needed republishing from books which were either very old or actually out of print.
Yes.
And as I started doing that, I could see that there wasn't enough in the archive to make a varied collection. So that turned into, with a lot more research and many more pieces, into the Oxford Service Music anthologies. And then, well, I won't bore you with all the rest, but it went on from there. But the volumes I've done with Frederick Stocken, graded keyboard musicianship, was very much our idea. And that actually developed after the summer course one year when Frederick was teaching the keyboard skills courses. And chatting to him afterwards, he said to me, if only we had some graded material so that I can teach a class and I haven't got to use 16 different books to accommodate all the different standards and all the different skills.
Yes, I think those books fill a huge void, because I certainly felt in my organ journey, I don't know if you did, but suddenly you had to transpose and things, and these skills seemed to come out of nowhere. Yeah. Suddenly at a higher level you were expected to do it, and there was no real stepping stone.
Yes.
Into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm absolutely passionate now. I think we should teach keyboard skills from year one. I know you believe exactly the same thing with your innovative teaching. Yeah, right from the beginning, we need to teach these keyboard skills. Otherwise, they're a nightmare, aren't they? When you suddenly find, oh my goodness, I've got a diploma or I've got an audition. Yes.
Absolutely. You think, oh, I'm grade 8, I've learned how to play, and then you suddenly get a test and you can't do it, and it's quite soul destroying actually.
It is soul destroying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we decided we'd write some books. So we actually took that project to OUP. But I think in every case, I've only gone into publishing any one of those books because I looked around and there was absolutely nothing competitive on the market. So I'm now rather embarrassed when I say to my students, can you buy this book which I wrote, and this book which I wrote, and this book or edited, you know. But there's no competition. There is more competition now, actually. There are many more books on the market now. I think that all the publishers have decided there's a big market out there for less advanced organ pieces.
Yes, especially
I'm
for
very
those.
pleased about.
And of course, there are a lot of organists who initially we often describe them as reluctant organists, people who that church needs somebody else to play, and there isn't somebody, and somebody who used to play the piano a bit, and they're happy to help out, but they feel nervous, they feel insecure, they haven't got the background, and they need a little support.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me now about the women organist group that you've been spearheading as part of the team there.
With Ghislaine Rees-Trapp. We've worked together right from the start on this, and it's been a terrific partnership. I'm not sure how many precedents there have been for twin chairs, but certainly in our case, it's been hugely beneficial and lovely for me because she's young and I'm not. And we speak together about the Society of Women Organists, which we chair every week. My husband is always astonished that we have over an hour's discussion every single week. There's so much to do and so much to say. How did it come about? Well, it's bugged me throughout my career that the gender imbalance was dire and is still dire. I know some people say, oh, well, it's getting much better. But it's very interesting. If you compare the gender balance now with 120 years ago or so, it's worse now. Interesting, isn't it?
Right, that is interesting.
There were lots of women organists at the end of the 19th century, but it gradually declined. Okay, there are some encouraging signs at the moment, but we still have an awful lot of work to do to address the gender imbalance. Anyway, it's bugged me for years. Couldn't decide what to do about it. But then Ghislaine wrote a brave article and gave a brave Olympus Prize winner speech at the ARCO prize giving. And so I approached her and said, let's do something about it. Her speeches and her article had been about the gender imbalance. And so to cut a long story short, we got together with 4 other women we knew were very involved with, committed to addressing the gender imbalance. And we recruited, and we have something like 170 members now, hoping to get to 200 by the end of the year. Men and women alike, anyone who supports our aims.
Of course, yes. Yeah. And of course, it's interesting that that's despite the fact that, like yourself, there have been other, high-profile female organists in the past, very, very big names, and yet it hasn't necessarily filtered down. Yes,
but I'm sure, we won't do it during the course of this interview, but I'm sure if you and I assembled those names, we'd be able to list them in 5 minutes flat, and they'd be the same names.
Yeah,
I
probably.
think to some extent, it's because of their rarity that we can immediately think who they are or were.
Yes.
So effectively, there haven't been that many.
No.
And perhaps there haven't been enough sort of middle range women in the profession for younger women to see them as role models. As I said, I was lucky. There was a woman organist, well, there's 2 women organists at my church. I didn't realise at first that there was a gender imbalance. But eventually, I gradually realised that there were organisations out there. For example, when I was in my last 2 years at school, nowadays, I think every school would say, had you thought about being an organ scholar at university? And I'd vaguely heard of organ scholars at university, but I just assumed that that was men only.
Yes.
And the Royal College of Organists, trustees, council was all men. And I could quote lots of things. And I didn't question it at first. I just thought, well, the organ world is male. And I'm a very small cog, and I'm female. But eventually, I thought this is daft because we're not giving opportunities to the younger women if we exclude them.
I think when you grow up with something that's always the same,
yes,
it doesn't necessarily stand out to you, and it's only when you think outside the box that you become aware of those differences and imbalances, isn't it?
nicely put. Absolutely.
And when you realise that you don't have to accept the norm because it's always been like that,
Yes, that's
there
right.
is room for change.
Yes.
So where do you see, as a bigger picture, where do you think the next stage for the organ world is? You have been a tremendous pioneer in so many ways, and I think you are very entrepreneurial, very creative, very dynamic, and you've created initiatives like the National Learn the Organ Year. Where do you see the next stages?
I think I'm a very practical person. Thank you for those compliments, but I think it all boils down to I see a problem and I deal with it if I can. I never think all that far ahead, actually, but I'm pleased other people in our world do. For example, I think the RCO has been fantastic over the last 18 months. All these online provisions. There's so much out there now, and classes on Zoom and so on. Hats off to them. Hats off to you for all the work that you're doing, this innovative stuff with your with this very same website. I really don't think I do ever look all that far ahead, but I don't like to sit back if I can see a problem that one can do something about.
Good. Anne Marsden Thomas, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, Robin.